Welcome to Taxidermy Truths, where we discuss the ins and outs of not only the taxidermy process, but the influences on the hunting community as a whole. With over 25 years in the wildlife and taxidermy industry, I host open conversations with artists, experts, and industry giants. From sustainable utilization to shipping rates, we dig into the reality of the experience after the safari and hear real stories worth remembering. Hi there, my name is Douglas Cocroft and welcome to Taxidermy Truths. Today I'd like to tackle one of the topics that often is misunderstood, and that is shipping and the relationship between taxidermist and the various shipping entities. So before I get into the relationship side of things, let's take a look at what are the different steps in the export of a taxidermy consignment from South Africa to the United States. So, as a taxidermist, taxidermy is run on what is called an ex-works process. It means that, theoretically, the responsibility of the taxidermist, who is the manufacturer, their responsibility ends at their back door when they hand the trophies over to be dispatched and exported. That is ex-works. But over the years, shipping and taxidermy have become interlinked to the international hunter because the taxidermist organizes the shipping. The taxidermist has a relationship with a shipper. But this is a very ambiguous way of looking at it, and I believe it is what is causing a lot of stress and unnecessary friction within the industry. So, once the taxidermist has finished their art project, the consignment is done, the permits are applied for export by the taxidermist. Those permits, together with the crate, then get handed over to a freight forwarder. Okay, so what's a freight forwarder? Freight forwarder or a freight broker is an agent that consolidates freight volume, taxidermy crates, hands it over to a freight carrier, and the freight carrier then carries it to final destination. So as you can clearly see, the taxidermist is not the shipper. But in order to let the process of dispatching and exporting the work run smoothly, you do often find a taxidermist will have a relationship with a freight forwarding company that ensures smooth transition from taxidermy to the export process. So there's a lot of contention at the moment, specifically on social medias, where it's being said that taxidermists are in bed with shippers, in bed with freight forwarders. This is not the case. Without the export processes and companies involved, taxidermy in Africa would come to an end. Yes, we have a fantastic local market, but as always, I will always give respect to the international market that has given true value to the wildlife in Africa. So we need to work together with various role players in getting that consignment from South Africa to the United States. Quick disclaimer. South Africa is a third world country. Things don't work the same way as they do in international first world countries. It's not click, click, send, deliver, and you can follow the breadcrumb of your crate arriving. Quite often, there are speed bumps, roadblocks, potholes, if you will, in the journey of getting your trophies from South Africa to final destination. Let's go back. Taxidermist finishes the job, gives it to a freight forwarder. But how do you get the crate from the taxidermist to the freight forwarder's premises? There's another service provider who unfortunately gets involved. Some taxidermists have their own trucks and are able to distribute and deliver the consignments to the freight forwarder in order that they can carry on with the export process. Others use a third-party company that co-load on trucks and deliver them to the various freight forwarders throughout South Africa. Now, whether you do air freight or ocean freight makes no difference. Freight forwarders would either consolidate onto containers for ocean freight or book onto the carriers, such as the airlines, Turkish Airline, Delta, and various others. They would book it onto those carriers in order to export those consignments to final destination. But there is going to be a lag, a time break between the day that the taxidermist dispatches and the day that the freight forwarder gets involved with the process. So now you've got an idea of taxidermist, freight forwarder. There's occasionally someone who assists with the distribution of the crate from taxidermist to freight forwarder. Now let's chat briefly about the carriers. You have an aircraft or you have a boat. There's your two options. Done. The big ships don't necessarily travel every month from South Africa to the United States. There are very few major commodities that necessitate a ship going from South African shores to the United States every month religiously. We also then have the problem of which carriers will carry hunting trophies. And what are their exceptions if they do? So some carriers will say, we'll carry all plains game. We won't touch CITES. Others will turn around and say, we'll carry hunting trophies, but we won't carry Big Five. Not that that's a scientific term, but it's something that they've literally got their claws into. So there are exceptions. And unfortunately, when it comes to the freight forwarders booking a consignment onto a carrier and onto that ship, if that particular carrier has reason only known to them that they don't want to carry buffalo, for example, if there's a buffalo in that shipment, it's not going to get loaded. So the freight forwarder plays an important role in establishing which airlines and which ocean carriers will carry which species safely and without any issues. It does apply to airlines. So if you look at Turkish Airlines, they've been really good to the hunting industry since about 2019 and carry a large volume of hunting trophies. So yes, it goes up into Europe and then goes across. But in that route, there's regular transport. Delta Airlines will carry, but it's expensive, it's a top dollar carrier, and there are certain rules that are imposed and what they will and won't carry. So therein comes the price difference. You can often get a cheaper rate by air freight with going with one airline compared to another airline, based upon the rules and the frequency of aircrafts between South Africa and final destination. Ocean carriers, out of South Africa in general, there are 2 ocean liners that travel from South Africa to the United States twice a year. They go only twice a year. One sort of that March-April period, another one September-October. Freight forwarders can consolidate and fill containers at those periods. But those are the only 2 times of the year when you can actually ship using ocean freight, which, as everyone is well aware, ocean freight is much more affordable. It's slower. There are a lot of hidden costs and risks to ocean freight, but the price mark makes it all worthwhile. So you do have a lot of folks opting to go the ocean freight route. So once you get the consignment out of the factory to the freight forwarder books it on with a carrier. Let's look at the air freight routing. They book it onto an aircraft. The freight forwarders cannot control the rates that the airlines charge for freight in that period. There are constant fluctuations, which is often why you'll see on an export quote from a freight forwarder that this quote will only be held for 7 days. Because within 7 days, there may be a fluctuation, and it may move from $6 per volumetric kilogram to $9 per volumetric kilogram. I've seen it go as high as 7 till 12 over a period of 4 weeks. So there's always uncertainty around the rates charged, and it's all based on the load that those airlines are carrying at that particular time and their capacity to take more freight. Wouldn't it be great if in the taxidermy process, when you decide what to do with your animals, there was a service that said to you, your shipping will cost you X, and your consignment will fill a crate with a volume of Y. That rate is held for 12 months. So when you get to the end of your taxidermy process, there's no surprises, and you know what's coming. That would be an incredible service. Ocean freight is something that has been publicized as being less expensive. It's true. The rate per volumetric kilogram is lower. Here's the but. If you imagine a 40-foot container filled with all these boxes like a Tetris puzzle, that container gets loaded onto a ship. The ship takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks on sea to get to port of destination. So let's say it's going to Houston. It gets in there, they offload the container. When they offload the container, they notice that there is a permit inside one of the shipments inside that container that they think there's an error. Immediately, Customs and US Fish and Wildlife and all of these clever people, they stall the container. And after your first 5 days of free storage in that port, everyone on the waybill of that container, everyone on that loading docket is liable for the storage fee. There's a hidden cost. That storage fee gets split up proportionately amongst all of the consignments, and that gets handed over to the clearing agent in the United States. The clearing agent then passes that charge on to the customer. Hidden costs. Let's move on to a clearing agent. You have two options. You can clear your trophies yourself when they're flown in. It's more difficult to clear them yourself when they've been put into a container with other shipments. So let's just look at air freight. It arrives, there's documentation you fill out. You can clear the trophies yourself and go and collect them at the port of entry. But when I tell you it's a lot of paperwork, standing around, waiting, back and forth, it's an administrative nightmare, in my opinion. I would rather pay a clearing agent who is equipped and understands all the steps in quickly clearing a consignment. Charges of a clearing agent to clear a consignment range between $600 and $800. It's not an unreasonable amount to pay per hunter for the service of taking that headache away. So let's follow it from the beginning. Taxidermy is completed, transported to the freight forwarder. Freight forwarder books it onto the vessel, either ocean or air. It travels over to final destination, arrives at port of entry. At that point, it goes into the hands of a clearing agent. Clearing agent clears it through customs, and then the clearing agent has the option of saying to you, as the hunter, would you like to collect your shipment from our facility, or can we arrange a local carrier, a domestic carrier, to transport your trophies to your home? The cost of the air freight, the cost of the clearing agent, the cost of the transport company that will transport the trophies from the clearing agent to your home. All of those costs Number one, fall onto the client. Number two, are out of the hands of the taxidermist. Taxidermist has no control over what those role players charge. So the key to making the shipping process affordable is the planning. Planning from the taxidermist side, making sure that the crates are tight, keeps the volume down. Making certain that when it comes to delays, we avoid them by doing the paperwork correctly, the permitting correctly. You as the hunter, if there's any paperwork such as an import permit that needs to be put in place, do it thoroughly, because that'll save time and that saves money. Shipping is not a function of the taxidermist. In my opinion, the taxidermist job is only done when those beautiful animals are on the hunter's wall and he's enjoying them. And for that reason, I would suggest very strongly that taxidermists stay involved in the process of export of their valuable clients' trophies. Being in contact with the freight forwarders, being in contact with the clearing agents. We're not going to get in contact with the carriers because, believe me, Turkish Airlines are not interested in taking my call. And I'm also not interested in waiting in a call center and talking to a computer. But you can speak to the clearing agents. You can speak to the freight forwarders and ensure that they have everything that they need to process your order as fast and fluidly as possible. Freight of trophies from South Africa to the United States is not that scary. The devil is in the details, making sure the permits are in place, making sure that everyone is aware of what has to be done and when. As the hunter, good understanding of the process will set your mind at ease while that happens. I often get asked the question, but how long does shipping take? From the date of dispatch at the taxidermy to delivery, air freight, you can look at about a month, I would say. Ocean freight, at least 2 months. That's subject to the availability of vessels. Because if next month there's some embargo against carrying springbuck on an airline, then everything has to get reshuffled. We have to look for new routes. The freight forwarder engages with the carriers and negotiates ways of getting consignments onto these aircrafts. Time of year. Don't get caught in the Christmas rush. Exporting in December and January. You are competing with that Christmas flow of product all over the world. The rates are going to go up. Done. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm yet to see a December and January where the rates don't hike. They do come back down, and we've certainly seen some wonderful corrections over the last 3 years. So don't let shipping scare you. Know the process, understand it, and it becomes a part of the journey to getting your incredible memories back on the wall. Thanks very much for watching. I hope this sheds a little bit of light on a subject that is often shrouded with questions and fear and doom and gloom. It's not doom and gloom. Everyone has their part to play, and it's important that we all know how to work with one another to get the final product on the wall. Thank you.